Hey, welcome to a brand new episode of the Straight Up Sugar Podcast. I am your host, Calvin. Hey, I am by myself today, but I want to give a shout out to my wonderful crew from working so hard behind the scenes, Brandon, Lee, and Christina. Hey, I miss you guys, but today you have the honor of having just me by yourself, so you get to hear my voice the majority. But have no fear, we have a great show lined up for you today. We are in the age of uncertainty on so much stuff right now. It's I really think that 2020 has really impacted not only just the United States, but the entire world. And me personally, I know I've dealt with some personal issues, and I have more than once seen friends deal with personal issues and kind of just having decisions, making hard decisions that they normally wouldn't make, and it's impacted their personal relationships, their family relationships, their friendships. Me personally, the same way. And so we often talk about mental health and kind of being better every time we talk. And so today's no different. And we have the honor of having a guest today that is an award-winning author, a thought leader, and an international speaker and trainer. She has been awarded a 2020 Woman of Inspiration Award, and in 2021 was recognized as a top behavioral expert of the year. She has a book called Shift, Four Steps to Personal Empowerment, has won 3 awards, and is sweeping the globe with all her work she's been doing. So without further ado, help me welcome Miss Adele Spraggon. Adele, thank you so much for coming on our show today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Calvin. Happy to be here.
And like, I want to make sure I get you title. Do I call you Miss Adele, Miss Spraggon? Like, what
Adele is fine.
Okay, and
just I feel like the singer.
I feel so bad because like I'm from the South, and so I don't want to like say, oh, Adele. My mom's like, hey, you gotta call her Miss Adele. So I'm so sorry if I say Miss, I'm so sorry. Okay.
Whatever you call me, I will answer. How's that?
Okay, that's fine with me too. All right. So, Miss Adele, thank you so much for coming on our show. I kind of gave you like a brief. This was all set up very quickly. So I want to publicly say that I'm sorry for missing our first meet, but I am so glad that you're here today.
Oh yeah, I'm happy to be here too.
Okay, so before we get started, just tell us a little bit about yourself. I kind of touched on it briefly, but you have a lot that you have done. But can you just tell us who you are, where you're from, and what have you done?
Yeah, so I'm from Ontario, Canada. Just coming into spring here, so we're finally getting through the cold weather. And for the last 30, 35 years, I have been in the field of behavioral change. So I was a coach before, and I was trying very, very hard to change my patterns of behavior. And it wasn't until I really hit the wall and I really had to regroup and question whether I had the right operating instructions for this brain of ours that I managed to change my behavior. So one pattern that I had that I repeatedly used was high anxiety. And I know, Calvin, you wanted to talk today about anxiety. So it's a great topic to talk about because the world is becoming more and more anxious. I struggled with panic attacks for over 10 years, every single day for over 10 years. And it wasn't until I really took a deep dive into this human brain of ours to understand how it is that it makes decisions and how it operates that I was finally able to overcome my own anxiety. So great topic and much needed today.
Yeah, so much so. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But can you just give us some of your accolades that you have gone? I'm over here reading all this stuff. Like you have a list of accolades. Can you just give us, brag about yourself a little bit? Can you tell us something about your accolades that you had and how did that come about?
Yeah, sure. So, well, I am recognized as the Woman of Inspiration Award for Best Customer Service. I am the Top Behavioral Change Expert of the Year in 2021. My book has won 3 awards. And I think the reason that I keep winning all the awards and keep getting recognized out there as the thought leader is because what I speak about is highly effective and very different. than what we are used to looking at behaviors as. So, I think as thought leaders, you work with a lot of startups, I understand, and as thought leaders, we're all trying to change the message out there in some way. And so to be recognized as having a message that is unique and different and needed is, hey, I'm just so grateful that I'm able to spread the word.
Yeah, and like I said, we're gonna have more with her, and we're gonna talk about your book that has won all these awards. I'm kind of anxious now. I have to put that on my next list, and I mean, it's so much going on in this world. We're gonna have more with Adele Spraggon on the other side of the break. Don't go anywhere because we'll be right back with the Straight Up Show podcast.
Think straight up means to be able to speak in a way that is straight up, to be honest, and to speak your truth.
Raw, uncut, you know what I mean? It's blunt, straight to the point. This what it is.
It's just a place to be open and honest, and that's what I appreciate most about it. And it provides a place for community members to come together and just be straight up with each other about things that are going on in the world, because it affects all of us.
Unfiltered, raw, with all the cursing that Calvin does.
Straight up is just being real, telling it like it is, being you.
Being solid, being who you are, no matter what it is, no matter what situation you're faced with. All right, this is who you are. It really speaks to me, saying it is what it is and it ain't what it ain't. Straight up.
The videos and images displayed all across the world cannot fully express what the people of Ukraine are going through. This senseless act of terrorism has cost many their lives and forced millions of Ukrainians out of their homes. Yet it's the Ukrainians' pride and resiliency that has inspired the entire world. So we here at Straight Up ask you to stand for freedom, stand for human rights, but most importantly, join us as we stand with Ukraine. All right, welcome back to your Straight Up Show podcast. I'm your host, Calvin. Today, I am joined by award-winning author, Miss Adele Spraggon. Once again, thank you so much for coming on our show today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Calvin.
Let me ask you a question real quick. So you're in Canada. Do you hear my accent at all?
Oh, yes.
You do?
Do you hear mine?
I don't hear it. I don't hear it at all. No, I mean, like, I guess I do, but I feel like it's more of like Northern America. Well, it is kind of Northern America, but like Northern, like America. You know what I mean? Not Canadian, like, North America. But I can barely hear it. But yeah, that's so cool. I've always wanted to visit Canada. I've always wanted to visit it. Is especially Ontario. So I mean, I just know how that people love it out there.
Oh, it's a beautiful country. Yes. But so is America. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
places of beauty everywhere. But yeah, I love Canada.
And we are not strangers to having international guests. So this is our second Canadian on our show. So shout out to Canada. I really love those people. And they've always been so sweet and nice. So thank you so much once again for coming.
We are known for our manners, aren't we?
I don't think I've met.
For being nice.
Yeah, I think I've met a rude Canadian ever. So I mean, that's just, that's crap. Besides hockey, but that's a different point, So that's about it. But once again, we have Miss Adele Spraggon, award-winning author on our show, author of Shift 4 Steps to make sure I got this right. 4 Steps to empowering personal empowerment. There we go.
Yes. Shift 4 Steps to personal empowerment. Right?
Yeah, and we're going to talk a lot about that book, and because it's won 3 awards, as she said, and talk about that. But let's kind of dive deep into it right now. Let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room. COVID. As we were recording today, reports are saying that we might be on another surge, which has been ongoing for the past 2 years now. You personally, how did COVID impact you, especially in Canada?
You know, I've got to say something. Canadian are rule followers. We just follow the rules. So when we were told to go into lockdown, most people were okay with it. I'm not saying that everybody is rule followers. So we did have a few upsets, but for the most part, we were just willing to go along with it and ride it through. Happy to be on the other side, though. I got to say, Calvin, it's getting a little tiring not being out and about and going to restaurants and having fun. But now that we're coming through it, it's like, oh, good. But you're right, we are on the next surge. And so how we deal with COVID is much more important than the fact that COVID is in the air. It's going to be here forever.
Did you have any kind of personal setbacks because of the impact of COVID, or?
My business took a huge setback. I did it. Most of my sales and most of my delivery was done through live events. And so when COVID hit, and it was like that, if everybody recalls, right? One day it was nothing, the next day it was a pandemic. I had to close my doors. I just had to take everything that I do online. And so it's been 2 years of me building up that content online. And now I'm starting to get back up again where I was before. But yeah, I mean, I think for most people, it was a surprise and it was a shock when COVID hit.
Yeah, and now we're 2 years into this, and it really has. I think that I had a psychiatrist on the show before, and people like myself, who is an extrovert, who's outgoing. I think personally, people like me have really been impacted the most because you're putting people who are used to being like, out there, and you put people like us with big personalities in a bubble. Like, it's not easy to change us like that. And me personally, I've done this podcast, I've done multiple works at home, and now it's becoming a new norm.
Mhm.
And personally, I've had some issues with like different thoughts and stuff like that, and I've had some anxiety. But even just going like places like Walmart,
Mhm.
it used to give me anxiety. When I hate Walmart, by the way, but it's something. I don't know if I have Walmart in Canada, but that is like Walmart is like a chore. It's like, oh man, I have to go here. Like, it's really like, even before COVID, I hated Walmart. But like now, even more, it's like, man, like I'm going to Walmart. I'm going out and about, you know. So with that being the kind of mindset in most people, outside of just myself, like that kind of anxiety. Have you seen that a lot lately, or is that something that you dealt with lately, or?
Anxiety is definitely on the rise. I mean, there's massive amounts of anxiety on the planet today. And it's not just COVID, it's also in politics, it's everywhere, right? The war in Ukraine, everybody is facing now high levels of anxiety. And I think in order to understand anxiety, we need to understand how our human brain works. So, our human brain is what I call a pattern maker. It creates patterns, and that's going to sound obvious. It has neural pathways that it creates. But when we think about how our brain is, it's locked inside a dark and silent room, and it doesn't really have any access to the outside world. So information comes in through our senses, and our brain has to interpret that based on what it already knows. Here's the problem today. As more and more information streams in, as our world speeds up, as things become faster and faster, as we face pandemics, wars that most of us never had to face before, a changing political climate, our brain is struggling to keep up. And that's why there's so much anxiety. It's struggling to create new patterns to fit the changing world. And so any change for a human being can be tricky because the brain has to create those patterns in order to know what to do. Okay. So that's what we're up against. So the best thing we can do is learn how to rewire our brain. That is fundamental if we are going to face this changing culture head on. If we can learn how to create new patterns in our brain fast, then we will slide and sail through anything that comes our way now and in the future.
And I'm glad you said that, because it's like, part of me feels like we won't be in this pandemic forever, you know. I could be wrong because I think that 2020 would be 2020. Like I've been alive 32 years. I've never seen anything like that in my life, you know. And I know for me, and you talk about this a lot, it's when I have that kind of anxiety, and I'm not speaking just for myself, like since I've been in this bubble of like my attire has changed, you know, my whole attire. I haven't worn slacks in 2 years probably. Like I'm like, you know what? I'm comfortable. I don't have to wear a suit and tie or khakis anymore. You know, I'm not like the guy from State Farm, and you know, but it's things like that to where we're opening back up in the world, and a lot of people are quitting jobs,
Hmm.
you know, uh, procrastinating a lot.
Hmm.
I am definitely one of the people that procrastinate because I'm like, you know what, I am hitting that snooze button. You just heard my alarm go off. Like, you know, just I'm hitting that snooze button. I'm hitting it. And with this deal with procrastination, and you saying that we have to overcome it, like, what are some tips that we can train our brain uh, to get rid of this procrastination and slowly get back to where we were 2 years ago, to where I feel like now in America, especially that go getter attitude has gone, you know, and
Mm.
I feel like that it's not there anymore. Like, you know, even I think reports were saying that so many Americans quit their jobs last year, you know, because it was so easy to go back to, you know, home, and that remote learning was so easy, remote learning or remote working was easier. So like what are some steps that we can get ourselves out of that hump to, I guess, call it like mental laziness?
Yeah, I think, I love what you're saying about us changing through the pandemic, because that's exactly how the brain operates. Okay, so the brain is an adaptable, uh, it functions to adapt. And so let's think about it. I mean, before the pandemic, weren't we all running around crazed, like mad, all trying to get somewhere immediately, running around like getting the kids to this program and that program after school, and get to work and get home and spend 3 hours in traffic. And now people are going, why? You know, and that really shows how adaptable our brain is, because once we had that ability to just slow down a little bit, it went, no, maybe this isn't the way that I want to live anymore. Maybe that way of being just doesn't fit who I want to be anymore. And so now everything is changing again. The world is adapting again, which is awesome. So how do we go back to where we were before? Well, okay, let's look at procrastination. Actually, I'm going to start with a different pattern. How do we identify any pattern, anything that we're up against in the world? How do we know what it is that we are feeling doing? Okay, that's the question. So let's take anxiety. If you're anxious about anything, the best way to identify that pattern is by identifying the physical sensation, the emotion, and the thought. A pattern is a three-part intertwining. When our physical, emotional, and mental being come together, it results in a particular action. So I like everybody to think of themselves as an iceberg. The top of the water is everything you do, everything you feel, everything you think. Under the water is where your patterns lie. And patterns give rise to actions. So the behavior of anxious, of panic, is given by a pattern. And we can identify what that is. You might notice a tension arising or the heart beating faster. That would be the physical sensation. You might notice that fear starting to well up. That would be the emotion. And then the mind will come on board and start to say, oh my gosh, that is because the world is a mess right now. Okay. So if we could remove that pattern, and just imagine that I could just hand you a magic wand and you could just take that pattern out of your brain, then who would you be in the face of any anxiety, right? Well, who you would be is probably most likely, okay, I can handle this. I'm calm. I can deal with this. I can be anything that I want to be. So that's the beauty of managing it through your brain. So let's go with another pattern, procrastination, because Calvin's asking about procrastination. If you're procrastinating, I'd like you to close your eyes and notice how you feel inside about the task that you're trying to do. And you will notice that there's a lot of resistance to the task itself. You see, what human beings do is we don't procrastinate, we avoid. And what it is we avoid is the task. So when we know that that is the result of a brain pattern, and if we have a tool in our pocket to remove and upgrade that brain pattern, then procrastination just melts away. There's nothing to procrastinate because there's nothing to avoid. So that's a good way to think about procrastination. Oh, what am I avoiding? What is the task and how do I feel about that task? Remove that pattern, avoidance goes away, so does procrastination.
I mean, I feel kind of guilty now, but thank you.
And what's that?
I said I feel kind of guilty now, but yeah, thank you though. I mean, I thank you for those tips because everything you were saying, I'm like, I do that all the time, all the
Yeah.
time. You know, I know, especially with me, Miss Adele, like I'll just be working, right? And all of a sudden, like I just started panicking. I don't know why. Just like, and I feel like that I have something to do, and I really don't. But it's like I start to get the fear of something, and I'm like, well, what's going on? Like, you know, and it's like I'm just missing something. You know what I mean? Is that still anxiety, or
Yes, yes.
even though it's like the fear of unknown? I guess.
Yeah, so something that every listener needs to know is patterns are not logical. Our brain is very illogical. Okay. There is no logic between what it is thinking, feeling, doing, and what's actually going on the outside world. If it appears to line up, it is just simply because it appears to line up. Okay. So we don't have to have a reason to panic in order to have a panic attack. Calvin, I used to have panic attacks every morning at 2 a.m. I could count on them. It was weird. It would wake me up at 2 a.m. and I would look at the clock and I would be able to predict what time it was because I was panicking. Now, what was causing that? No idea. Okay. But as long as I was looking for the reason behind it, I was working on the wrong thing. As soon as I was able to see it as just a pattern and give myself a tool to upgrade that pattern, then the panic disappeared. So we need to turn inwards and stop asking ourselves why and start to just ask ourselves what. What am I feeling? Where am I feeling it? What is one thought that is going through my head? Then upgrade that pattern and poof, it's just gone. I just never panicked after that. And I'll tell you, it was night and day. Calvin, I stepped out of one identity in which panic was my daily way of being into another identity, and it just wasn't. I just never panicked again. That's how powerful it is to work with the brain rather than working with the situations.
That I've never heard it like that before. That makes so much sense because, you know, that I'm glad that you told me about your story of panic attacks because, like, I have mine. Like, I guess when people have their 5 o'clock coffee, you know what I mean, or whatever. Like, that's when I have mine. Like, it's just randomly, like around 6 o'clock p.m. or 7 o'clock p.m. Like, and it's not daily, but when I do have them, it's at that particular time to where I'm cool. I'm at home resting, but
Mhm.
at that time, like, it's just like I gotta do something. I'm like, you know, but that's so crazy to identify that pattern by using what time it happens. I like that. That's very so much so. Do you
Yeah,
think that?
if I can just add to that, everybody who has panic attacks will be able to predict it based on either the time of day or the night of day,
Mm,
or based on the situation. So, social anxiety, you're walking into a situation, you'll feel that panic arising, right? Um, Reading the newspaper, they feel that panic arising. So, it's any sensory data that is coming in, and the time of day can be sensory data, or a situation can be sensory data.
yeah, we are in the age of change. You know, one thing that remains constant is change, and that can be more inevitable till, you know, these past 2 years. What role do you think that social media plays in people's anxiety?
Huge, massive. I mean, it's, I remember pre-internet. I'm 59 years old. Okay. I can remember a world when we didn't have social media. And social media is having a massive impact on our brain. Here's the thing that we need to know about our brain. It is adaptable and it does adapt and it is designed to do that. And so we do not have the autonomy or the choice to say, I will accept that information or I won't. Our brain is just constantly being fed by information. So we have to be careful which information we allow in, or we have to have a tool in our pocket to address the pattern that gets created when we let information in. Okay, so let me just check in with Calvin on what I just said, because it's really important that everybody understands this. We believe that we are independent and that we get to choose what we accept or what we believe and what we don't. But that's not the way our brain functions. Our brain functions to create patterns. And every new information that it receives, it creates a pattern to deal with that situation. Oh, sorry, that information. And so here we are in the social media world, which is really, in many ways, angry at, how would you describe it, Calvin? What, like, when you look at social media, what do you see?
I really think that it exposes people for, I guess, in the lack of a better term, sheep, I guess, because and people. I talk about my displeasure in social media a lot on the show, and I feel like that it is the root of people's emotions, I think.
Yes. I mean, it's proven that young girls now are so highly influenced by the images that they see on social media that they're starting to really despise their own bodies. I mean, that's so sad because those images on social media aren't true. But, notice how the brain is just absorbing all of that information and it has no way to discern what's right, what's wrong out there. And so it just absorbs it all. It just creates patterns. And then we suffer inside that pattern. So here's the best way to deal with social media. Does it work? Does it work for everybody? Does it work for you? If it doesn't, know that you're being influenced by it and make sure that you have a way to upgrade the pattern in your brain that gets created when you're impacted by it.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said it because I've worked with a lot of females, and mine particularly, she wants to look like Kim Kardashian.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and it goes both ways, especially with people of my skin color and my ethnicity. They want to be like rappers. They want to be like, certain other. I'm like, well, that's an image being portrayed. And I think that social media portrays an image that people crave, and then when you fall short of that craving, like even when you overeat, you fall short of that craving. Like, well, if I start a diet tomorrow and I just eat one piece of something, oh, well, I got to quit right now, because I didn't get a 6-pack the next day, and that's why, that's why I really have an issue with social media and people's emotions, because you're changing yourself into somebody that's not, who you're meant to be, I guess, in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our brain is highly influenced by what's around it. And knowing that, then we can protect ourselves. So, yeah, it's very important.
Trust me, because if I can do one sit up and have a 6-pack tomorrow, trust me, I'll be happy, But it doesn't work like that. And even if I lose weight, there'll be somebody on social media who tells me that I don't look good enough, So that's my biggest beef with social media. And I think that has played an impact on it. And we're going to talk more about trying to deal with this and finding solutions with your pattern of behavior with Miss Adele Spraggon on the other side of this break. Stay tuned. This is the Straight Up Show podcast. Stay tuned. In the 2 years that Straight Up has been a podcast, we've gone to where most podcasts have never gone before. From multiple celebrity guests to groundbreaking episodes, Straight Up is changing the podcast game. And now that season 6 is finally here, we plan to continue leveling up with our exclusive season 6 merchandise. That's right, grab your 80s retro inspired merch today. Just visit our website at straightupshowpodcast.com. That's STR8 upshowpodcast.com. Shirts as low as $19.99.
Actress or a model or somebody who's looking to do something impactful, ain't nobody gonna find your ass in no Shreveport.
Sometimes when you're home, you don't want to leave because you're comfortable. But your biggest dreams can be the push you need to take risk. And leaving a city that made me, a city that can't be duplicated, is a challenge I had to accept. No matter where my journey leads me, I'll never forget home.
I'm Sultan Salahuddin from Southside Season 2 out right now. Make sure you tune in to the Straight Up Show podcast because that's where it's happening. You dig?
All right, we're having a good time here on the Straight Up Show podcast. Thank you for joining us. We're talking about anxiety, procrastination, and just making sure your brain is functioning in this world that we have. Once again, we're joined today all the way in Canada, Miss Adele Spraggon. Thank you so much for coming on our show today.
Yes, lovely.
And I like people who come on this show and challenge me because I'm like, I never thought about stuff. And the way you talked about just finding your patterns, I never thought about that because like I know I'm self-aware of my patterns, but it's like, what can I do, about these patterns? And so the whole thing about you being vulnerable and telling us about your 2 a.m. Anxiety attacks, that makes me like, wow, okay, so here's a professional and she's talking about her issues with her past issues with anxiety and how she dealt with it. So this is the kind of show that we're having today. And she's been a delight so far. So once again, I say thank you for doing this for us today.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So this we talked about COVID in this past 2 years, and we briefly touched on the war in Ukraine. And it just seems that I think there's a shift going on, And I think that a lot of people, whether it's in America to where people aren't doing as much work now because they're like, you know what, why am I killing myself for just because the gas is going up to $8 or something like, so and then, we have this tension in the Middle East and then of course the tension in Europe and, what are your thoughts on all this tension going on? And do you feel that there is like this kind of new shift of not just nationally, but globally as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. I touched on it before, Calvin, but I think it's really important for everybody to know why we are feeling more and more stressed today than ever. How does the brain work? Well, the brain works by creating patterns. As I was saying, it creates those neural pathways. Once it has learned a pattern, so our brain, unlike other animals, we are not born knowing what to do. Human beings have to learn everything from the moment they're born. And so every situation that you're in, your brain takes that action that you took at the time and stores it away for future use. Okay? Then once it has a pattern for that situation, it just continues to rely on it. So my 2 a.m. panic attacks was because I had a pattern that got fired every morning at 2 a.m. Okay? Calvin's 6 p.m. Panic attacks are the same thing. He has a pattern in his brain. So here we are, and we've created all of these patterns in our youth, and we continue to try to use them today for every situation that we're in as adults. The problem is the world is speeding up and things are changing. So the pandemic changed everything. The war in Ukraine is changing everything. Social media changes are changing everything. Changes in politics are changing everything. All of this stuff is coming at us. And our brain is still trying to use those old past created patterns to deal with it. That's why we're stressed. It's got nothing to do with what's actually going on out there. The reason that we feel stressed internally is because we are trying to use a pattern that is misaligned now for the situation that we're in this moment. Our brain, though, has plasticity, and that's just a fancy term that means it is capable of upgrading. And anytime it faces a brand new situation, it does and will change. It changes the brain. That happens spontaneously all the time. What we want to do is we want to make that systematic. I'd like to give everybody a tool that you have in your pocket. So anytime you're feeling stressed, anxious, fearful, procrastinating, avoiding, don't know what to do, you can apply this 2-minute technique in the privacy of your own head and upgrade your pattern so that you create you're calmer, more at peace, and able to take a better action because you're aligned with the situation as it is. Is that cool?
It is cool.
Okay.
Somebody like myself, and we're going to talk about it here in a second. What are some goals that you can give people who are extremely extroverts and now they are like, what are some, because we talk about your 4 steps.
Yeah.
Somebody like myself who is known for just like, see the world, do this, do that, and do that. And, just give me one, like besides going for a walk, because that's like the number one thing, go for a walk, like, or go out. That's too easy for me. You know what I mean? Like how can I get back to, I know there's something simple that I can do to make myself like, you know what, this feels somewhat normal again.
Okay. So how about we just briefly go through the 4-step technique that I would provide you to change your brain pattern
Okay.
so that you're more comfortable not being outside when you want to be, right? So here you are stuck inside. Okay, I said before that a pattern is an intertwined physical sensation, emotion, thought. So the first step is to identify that pattern. Let's stop thinking that the problem is I can't go out. And let's start addressing the problem as, okay, when I can't go out, I feel, and then you would find your emotion. So how does it feel, Calvin? Frustrating? Trapped? How does it feel?
It feels trapped. Sometimes
Great.
it feels trapped. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, awesome. So trapped. So I feel trapped. That's an emotion. And can you see how that would come with a particular physical sensation? When I think about feeling trapped, I can feel my stomach just go like it just clenches up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So the sensation is, in my case, my stomach clenches, the emotion is trapped, and the thought is I can't go out. Okay, that is a pattern that is making you suffer inside of not being able to go out. We can upgrade that pattern. So step 1 is just to identify it. Step 2 is to own it as a pattern. Yes, it is given by the fact that we can't go outside, but somebody else is quite comfortable inside, right? Because they have a different brain pattern. So we get to flip the switch and we get to say, okay, I created the pattern. I didn't create the resistance for going out. I didn't create the situation, but I did create the pattern. So that's step 2, is we're going to own it as a pattern. Then step 3 is to deconstruct that pattern. It's an intertwined physical sensation, emotion, thought. If we can just surrender to it, just surrender to the experience, then our subconscious is going to do all the heavy lifting for us. There's nothing we need to do other than just remove that pattern from our brain. Okay, now you're in the space where you can create a new pattern. And that new pattern will be, okay, I can't go out right now. I'm okay with that. Right? I'll go out in the future. And so, I used to think of myself as being a huge extrovert, and I was. Like every personality test I took, I was off the charts, right? Today, though, I'm not. I am an introvert or an extrovert, depending on what's going on in the situation. So it's context, and I can shift and change no matter what is happening. And in that, there is tremendous peace and this tremendous power. I don't have to be one way, I can be any way. And everybody who learns this technique gets to be that powerful. Like I call my book The 4 Steps to Personal Empowerment, because that's what it is.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of how you hit it right, because that's right what I was going to say. Now, step 2 of owning it, oof, that's a bump in the road for me. That's because people hate owning their own things. Trust me, like they don't want to own it. I think it's a big part of everything. But yeah, but I think number 4 is basically acceptance, right? Just accepting that. Allowing.
I like to say you don't have to accept anything, but you have to
allow it.
everything.
Okay,
Yeah,
allow it. Yeah. So yes, I think step 2, I'm gonna have to hit that bump. I'm like, ooh, do I want to own this? And because you have that stubbornness, and I think that a lot of this stuff that's going on right now has made me more reserved. And I think that this could be more for anybody, because like you said, we were in a world to where we were just going. And now it makes you take a step back and say, you know what? is the anxiety coming from me not being able to go? And was I having anxiety when I was going? You know what I mean? Like, it was I having that? And this is like a new norm for me, that this is kind of like a wake up call to where the real anxiety was not slowing down, and that's kind of how I would look at it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I mean, the timing of your anxiety is very interesting because it's coming at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
So here you are going throughout the day, doing everything that you need to do, and unaware of the level of stress that may or may not be underneath that, right? So, and I think that's what was happening a lot before the pandemic. Everybody was just in so much action that we never really stopped to check in to see how we were feeling. And then the pandemic hit and we were all forced inside, and there was nothing to do but to check what was going on inside, right? And so,
Self-reflect.
yeah. So at that point, it's like, oh yeah, like that wasn't working for me, but I didn't even know that wasn't working for us, right? That go. So yeah, I love what you're saying, Calvin, because it's so true. It's in those moments where we just get to slow down that we actually get to see if something is working for us or not.
Your book, Shift: 4 Steps to Personal Empowerment. I mean, we basically talked about the book already, but can you just tell our listeners this award-winning, awesome book that you have that is sweeping the globe? Can you tell us about your book and what inspired you to write this book?
Well, so here I was struggling with panic attacks, quitting every business that I started. I quit 3 businesses. And at the same time, I was a coach. I was supposed to be something. I was supposed to do differently. I was supposed to know everything, that I was able to be empowered, and I was not. So after I had tried everything, Calvin, I mean, everything, I became a meditation facilitator. I became a Kundalini yoga instructor. I did therapy for 10 years. I did positive thinking until my mind was blown with affirmations. I did visualizations. I did everything that everybody told me to do in order to be successful, and I still wasn't. At that point, I thought to myself, it can't be me. It just can't. I've done it all. And I just thought, okay, if it's not me, then it's something about the human brain that I need to know and understand differently. So I took myself to university as an adult, and I started to study the human equation. How do we make decisions as human beings? How is this brain working? And once I got it, I went, oh my gosh, we are all operating under the wrong operating instructions. And if we could just understand how our brain works, then we could know how to change any behavior that is not working for us. So I created these 4 steps, and I got together a bunch of people in my basement. I said, let's test it. And a whole bunch of them started to get really remarkable results, which I talk about in the book, and surprising things started to happen. And they started to take different actions effortlessly. I'm not talking about forcing ourselves to be different. They just effortlessly stepped out of one identity into another. And so then I decided, okay, I've got to write this down. This has to spread around the world because it's so needed today. So I wrote this book and I put all the instructions in it. So everybody who is a self-study person and who enjoys self-study, you can get everything from the book. And I gift the book because I really want everybody to have these new operating instructions. And so that's what I did. And then people started to pick it up. They loved it. It's highly effective. If people don't like reading, I also put training in Pattern Maker Hub, and they are welcome to get it that way. But honestly, we need to change the way we do things on this planet, and that is essential. And since we can, because our brain is so adaptable and so ready to be upgraded, once you know how, it's easy.
I think this book is needed at this point. And I know you're not a salesman, but you just sold me to buy this book. I really want to buy it now. So just Like, I really want to buy it now. I want to buy it now. That's
I'll gift it to you, Calvin. I'll gift it to all of your listeners. The only thing I ask is that people pay for shipping,
oh,
but I will send you a free autographed copy. And yes, please, once you've
thank
got the
you.
book, join the Facebook group. Try and use the technique as best you can on your own. If anybody needs support, I'm also here to offer support. But honestly, we suffer too much on this planet. And we need to do things differently, and our brain is capable of doing things differently. So please don't suffer anymore. Get
Now,
the 4 steps, upgrade your brain, and let's let go of all that anxiety and suffering and
Adele,
conflict.
Adele, how does it feel that this body of work that you've done has received 3 awards? I mean, how does that make you feel that you did this in your basement and now it's getting accolades and winning
It's a
awards?
bit disbelievable, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm still shocked by it. I mean, I'm so grateful that it's being received as it's being received. And I think the reason that it's being received so well is just because it is so darn effective. I
Mm,
mean, when people use it, it's like, yeah, this fits. I mean, that's the one thing that people say to me. It's like, yes, this makes sense. And it makes sense at a cellular level. And that's what needs to happen when you read the book. Okay. It will and does make sense for you. And I think that's why it's so out there now and getting so many accolades. And I'm just extremely grateful that I can gift this to the world.
Hey, I just met you, but I'm proud of you. So
Oh, thank you.
keep it up. That's really
I
inspirational.
like to say though that I'm just the messenger.
It's the messenger.
I'm just the messenger.
And
I mean, there's something divine out there that just used me, and I'm fine with that.
and they got us together, and because like the way you broke it down today, it really has inspired me. And I knew some things, but it's like, wow, the way you broke it down and you simplified it for me, this football jock, and it just makes me feel like, you know what, I could be more self-aware and I have the proper steps to take now. And I can get more in-depth learning from reading your book. So for those who are listening right now, how can they find you on social media and actually join your groups and also get this book, Shift 4 Steps to Personal Empowerment? How can they find you on social media? Please tell us.
Yeah, so if you go to the website www.shift4steps.com, that's the number 4. There's 2 buttons there, 2 links. Just click either one. One is for free training, one is to get a free copy of my book. And I will send you out an autograph copy or give you the free training, which is available in the site. Okay, so wherever you go. Or Google my name. You'll find me all over social media. Join the private Facebook group once you've got the book, and you can get support there. You can ask me any questions in there. Yeah, just know that your brain is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. This human brain of ours, it can overcome any challenge if we know how to work it. So learn how to work your brain, and boom, you'll be sailing through life.
Yes, I love it. And let me ask you this, but I really feel like this because I'm trying to be a very positive person because there has been so much negativity in the world, even at my young age at 32 years. Uh, I really feel like now that all this stuff is happening, that there's no other way but to heal and to be more loving now, I think. And I think after seeing what happened to George Floyd and now seeing what happened in Ukraine, to see not just a nation, but a globe unite and saying that no more,
Yes.
we don't want to see this. Does that give you kind of high hopes before you pass or before I pass that we will witness this love? Do you think that way too, or is I'm just being I guess I'm just being a certain way?
Yeah, in the book, I talk about the difference between our right hemisphere and our left hemisphere. We live in a left hemisphere dominant world, and that left hemisphere is very much it's not its design. And when it is dominant, as it is now, it creates a lot of fear, a lot of paranoia, a lot of division. separation. That is what is going on in the world. And everybody needs to know that. What we need to do is strengthen the communication back to our right hemisphere. Children use a whole brain. As kids, we all were born using both hemispheres of our brain. We are educated to prioritize the left hemisphere. That's creating the division, the separation, and all the hate in this world today. In your right hemisphere, compassion is your birthright. It is just innate. It just is. And as Calvin is saying, if we strengthen that communication back to our right hemisphere, it's just compassion, trust, wisdom. That's what we need to do today. Let's forget about all the other stuff that we can do out there in the world, unless if every person could just work on, okay, I just got to strengthen my communication back to my right, just take a step to the right hemisphere of my brain, it will solve all the problems on this planet. And I've seen it happen. It happens with every pattern maker. Happiness, peace of mind, compassion, wisdom, trust, it's just innate. It is built in. It's your birthright.
Oh, you're about to have me in tears. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on our show, giving us so much wisdom. Thank you for being inspirational. And I want to extend this invitation for you to come back on our show to give our listeners more knowledge in the future.
I would love that. Yes. Let's dive a little deeper into right brain, left brain, and what we can each do to solve, really deeply, deeply solve the problems on this planet today. Okay. And it's much simpler than we think.
Very simple. I couldn't agree with you more. And of course, if you missed any information, we'll have her information if you're listening to our show on the ticker below hand right now. And then we'll also have her information on the episode guide as well. Once again, Adele Spraggon, thank you for coming on the Straight Up Show podcast.
Thank you, Calvin. Happy to be here.
Yes, and we want to extend the invitation to you to join the conversation outside of this episode. Make sure you go to our website at straightupshowpodcast.com. That's STR8 upshowpodcast.com. You can also go to our Patreon page. If you want to support us, make sure you don't just support us, but support Adele and her message and everything she's trying to get to empower you and to make you think differently as well. Our Patreon page is patreon.com/StraightUpShowPodcast318. That's patreon.com/StraightUpShowPodcast318. Until then, there's only one rule to our show. That is, you got to be
straight up.
All right. See y'all guys next time.